So we're going to turn to looking at social protection in Bangladesh, looking at food transfers, cash transfers, behavior change, communication, and child nutrition. This is joint work with Akhter Ahmed and John Hoddinott, and we gratefully acknowledge our PIM funding. So this work is really motivated by the very compelling evidence that early childhood nutrition investments have lifelong importance. And this is especially the case for those made in the first 1,000 days, which refers to conception to age 2. This affects everything from long-term cognitive ability to educational attainment, health outcomes, labor market outcomes, even marriage market outcomes. And increasingly, the nutrition literature is arguing that if you want to improve child nutrition at scale, we have to go beyond nutrition-specific interventions. So that might be, for example, supplementation. And instead, we need to also build on programming in other sectors that address the underlying causes of undernutrition. And so this is referred to as nutrition-sensitive programming. And an example of this would be social protection sectors, where the interventions already target poverty, which is an important driver of undernutrition. So social protection programs, particularly cash transfers, which are kind of the leading form of social protection in many places now, show overwhelming evidence of, in fact, improving beneficiaries' consumption and, in fact, reducing poverty, which, as I said, are main drivers of undernutrition. However, cash transfer programs have not shown meaningful effects on child nutritional status when you look at kind of reviews across the evidence. And this is typically the measure of child nutritional status is usually height for age, which is a commonly used marker of nutrition in early life. And just to be clear about what I mean by a marker, this is to say that it's not that we directly care about height, but height has a lot of common indeterminants with outcomes that we do care about, for example, child development. So we kind of, and it's also much easier to measure in the field, so we kind of think of it as a very convenient summary measure of the nutrition and disease environment in early life. So all that said, cash transfer programs are seen as a highly promising platform for improving child nutrition at scale. There are about 1 billion cash transfer beneficiaries in the world, but that promise has largely not been fulfilled. So it kind of raises the question, what is it that's missing? Is it that resources alone are just not sufficient for improving child nutrition? Could it be that there are other constraints that, along with resources, need to be addressed? So, for example, is the knowledge of how to use resources to improve nutrition and actually being able to act on that knowledge also something that needs to be addressed. So this study, the Transfer Modality Research Initiative, was a collaboration between IFPRI and WFP Bangladesh to design a pilot program to actually test this. So we incorporated transfers with nutrition behavior change communication, or BCC, and I'll tell you in a moment what that means. So it was designed based on 2 cluster randomized control trials in the north and south of Bangladesh, targeting mothers of young children under 24 months in very poor rural households. So in the north and the south, there were 5 arms each. 4 of those arms were the same across the region. So each of them had a control group getting nothing, a cash group getting about the equivalent of $18 a month, a food group getting that equivalent in terms of rice, lentils, and oil, a cash and food group getting half of each, and then the 5th arm in the north was getting the cash along with nutrition BCC, and again I'll tell you what that is. And in the south, instead of cash with BCC, it was food with nutrition BCC. So the BCC itself was, you can kind of think of this as a proof of concept. So it was very intensive, and the idea was really to understand, if you did this kind of the Cadillac version, could you have an impact on child nutritional status? So the core component was a weekly group meeting. This is over 2 years, a weekly group meeting of 9 to 15 mothers with a trained community nutrition worker. The curriculum was really focused on kind of the technical aspects of infant and young child feeding, so diet diversity, WASH, micronutrients, breastfeeding, complementary feeding, maternal nutrition. And it was done in a very interactive format. So women really liked attending these. And it was also done with a kind of eye to the context. So there were some combined sessions for other household members, cognizant that in rural Bangladesh, women are not kind of making decisions on this stuff alone. In particular, husbands are actually the ones who go to the market to buy food because of female seclusion norms. And mothers-in-law are often the ones who make the decisions about kind of daily food menus. So those household members need to be brought on board. It's not enough to just train the mothers. There were also twice-a-month home visits by community nutrition workers. There were also monthly meetings between the program staff and influential community leaders to kind of pass on these messages to change norms at the community level around nutrition. So our data collection, very quickly, we had a baseline, midline, and endline for a 2-year intervention. Our estimation focuses on the kids that were at some point during the program under 24 months and within this first 1,000 days window. So that translates to kids who were 0 to 48 months at endline. So that includes those who were already born at baseline and those who were born during the intervention. That's 4,399 children. And I'll go through this very quickly. It's 2 randomized control trials, so we basically use kind of the standard experimental methods to estimate impacts on markers of child nutritional status, so height for age Z-score and stunting, which is height for age Z-score less than -2, as well as possible pathways for those impacts. Oh no, my pictures aren't working. Okay, well, the core result is that, here we go. The core result is that only Cash+BCC, only the combination of Cash with BCC causes a significant increase in children's height for age Z-score. So I don't know how well you can see the numbers, but that result is very robust. Essentially, the transfers alone have impacts that are quite close to 0, no matter how you if you change the sample a little bit, add controls. It's really just the combination of Cash with BCCs that has an impact on height for age. That also translates to a significant reduction in stunting from Cash+BCC of 7.8 percentage points, which is quite large relative to what the reductions in stunting were at this time in Bangladesh secularly. So in terms of trying to understand why these come about, we think it's plausibly because the addition of BCC significantly improves child diets, particularly the combination of Cash+BCC. So all of these arms, so Cash only, food only, Cash and food, and the arms with BCC, improve diets. You see increases in caloric intake as well as increases in protein intake. But what you see is that the combination of transfers plus BCC increase those things more. And specifically, the combination of Cash+BCC increases calories and protein, specifically protein, much more than the other arms. And this is also consistent with our finding that there's a significant increase in mothers' nutrition knowledge from the addition of BCC. When you drill down into the actual components of kids' diets that are being improved, so I'm not sure how well you can see this, but each of the arms would have transfers only. You do see some type of food that's being consumed more of because of the transfer. So Cash only improves food. This is in the north. Cash only improves fruit consumption. Food and Cash+Food increase legumes because there was lentils. But Cash+BCC increases a wide range of foods, including meat, fish, eggs, milk, and dairy. So it's increasing animal source foods. Similar in the south, but the combination of food plus BCC is somewhat more narrow. We also see that Cash+BCC increases other things that are kind of important components of child nutrition, so improves care practices, so specifically the number of solid or semi-solid feedings the previous day, not just the things that they eat, but how often they're fed, which is an important part of child feeding, and it also improves hygiene practices, so the use of latrine soap, and it decreases morbidity. So to sum up, in TMRI, as in the previous research that's been in reviews, transfers alone, we find, did not significantly improve child nutritional status as measured by height for age Z-score. I should mention that the transfers here were extremely well implemented, so kind of similar to the BCC, it was kind of the catalog version of transfers. So we're pretty sure that transfers really did not improve child nutritional status here. However, it's a proof of concept that adding an intensive BCC to the Cash did lead to significant improvements in markers of child nutritional status. So height for age Z-score improved by 0.24 standard deviations, stunting decreased by 7 percentage points. And this is consistent with the addition of BCC improving child diets as well as improving other care and hygiene practices. Particularly the Cash+BCC increased consumption of animal source foods. Lear and Frangillo, when they talk about how stunting and height for age are kind of markers of child nutrition, point out that child diet quality is in itself a very important outcome. And it suggests that impacts that we see on height may actually translate to the other outcomes we care about that have more functional importance, like early childhood development, since animal source foods have like the essential amino acids that contribute to brain development. So kind of the key takeaway here is that resources alone may not be sufficient to increase nutritional investments, and this kind of covers not just social protection, but any of the types of interventions we look at that increase incomes, whether they're ag interventions or anything else. That there may be a real lack of knowledge and also the ability to act on that knowledge. So, for example, intra-household dynamics that need to be addressed in order to kind of realize these improvements in nutrition. And just to kind of add a coda, that this finding has been extremely influential in Bangladesh. So the IFPRI Dhaka office, led by Akhter Ahmed, has done a lot of advocacy that's led to BCC actually being added to the largest safety net program for poor rural women, which is called the Vulnerable Group Development Program, as well as influencing several other programs in the country to add BCC to social protection. So it's kind of a happy ending here. And I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.